what is the biggest breakthrough that you kind of had up until this point in time with the business? And then on the flip side, what was the biggest kind of challenge that you had, the biggest challenge that you had to overcome? Seems like you had a lot of
So
breakthroughs and challenges with
yeah,
regard to manufacturing and being able to get it here in the US and
yeah.
kind of virality moments. What would you say was the kind of the biggest breakthrough with the business up until this point in time? And then on the flip side, the maybe biggest
Yeah.
challenge that you had to overcome?
I think the biggest breakthrough by far was the viral videos. I think the return on investment on those is just unlike anything anyone has, the social media provides this incredible return on investment from your time. So, if you're doing it right and you're willing to put in the work and be consistent, you know, you can make it happen. Um, and so that's by far been the biggest turning point and positive. Just that is what started the dominoes,
Yep.
the domino effect.
Welcome to another episode of Everything Intellectual Property. Today, we have a very special guest with us. This gentleman has created a hanger that can be used for everything. Please help me welcome the founder and the CEO of Kangaroo Hanger, Angus Willows. How's it going, Angus?
Hey, good, very good. From down here in Austin, it's been an interesting couple of days and a lot of exciting stuff coming on the kangaroo front. So
Nice.
good.
Well, I know we're talking a little bit offline and excited to kind of go through your journey here and kind of talk about how IP has played a part in your journey and your story. A lot to get off into. I always like to ask the guests kind of before we get off into it, can you maybe describe the product for those who may be listening
Sure.
on an audio podcast and maybe don't get a chance to see the visuals on video, the video part of it? Can you kind of
Yeah.
describe what it is that you've created with the Kangaroo Hanger?
Absolutely. So the Kangaroo Hanger was an invention that I came up with in college. And my first inspiration for the Kangaroo Hanger was I had a tiny little wardrobe with maybe 10 or 15 cheap hangers in it. And I only had 10 or 15. So I only hung up my nice shirts and that was pretty much it. And maybe a pair of pants on the bottom.
Yep.
And so I started having issues with these hangers. My shirts would fall off, and I had a 3D printer underneath the hangers because I was studying mechanical engineering. And so my shirts would fall off and get stuck in the printer. And so I decided, okay, I need to figure out a way to clip in my shirts. And this was the first sort of innovation was how am I going to clip in my shirts so I don't have to button them up? Because that's really annoying, having to button them up every time and unbutton them. And so that they stay on, but also aren't a pain to take off either.
Yep.
And so that's where the first design came about. And it sort of looks like a hanger with a paperclip design sort of in the middle where it can clip in your shirt. And from there, I started adding features. My fiance had told me that the notches on most shoulders of hangers were horrible, and her straps, her dresses, and tank tops would fall off. And so, and also in addition to that, my shirts, they would get little notches on them from that part of the hanger, and it's just like it was ridiculous. Like
Yeah.
it sucks at holding straps, and it causes problems for all other garments. And so I integrated that into the hanger next, which uses the paperclip part in the middle to clip in spaghetti straps or dresses or things like that. I actually let me grab a hanger right.
Okay, no, yeah, for sure. And I know I had kind of pulled up the website that had the original hanger there, but I think it
Yes.
has that kind of next iteration with the alloy, the Kangaroo Hanger alloy. But it seems like you
Yes.
have one in handy as well.
Yes. And so, so the center part acts like a clip and clips in everything. So you can see there's pants clipped in through the bottom. So the clip part, it actually holds in your pants so that they can't slide off and end up on the floor. Which
happens frequently, the pants sliding off for sure.
Exactly. And I'll grab this stuff here. I'll show you. and I'll explain for those who are just listening. But yeah, it can clip in your pants on the bottom there. It clips in spaghetti straps onto the
Nice.
bar like this, and
Yep.
it locks them in so that they can't, they don't slide off as easily, but they're still really easy to take off and put on. But it just makes sense. And so that's for straps. Then you can also clip in sweaters. So you can clip it in,
Nice.
and it grabs onto the neck sort of. And so it allows it to hold the neck so the neck doesn't stretch out over time, which
Yep.
happens with standard hangers.
Nice.
And then, of course, as I had mentioned, the collared shirt issue was one of the first issues that I had. And it will clip in your collared shirts like a paper clip so
Mm.
that you don't have to button them up every time. And it just comes on and off really easily. Like
Oh, that's
it
sweet.
makes sense,
That's
you
sweet.
know? And then on
That's
top of
sweet.
that, one of my favorite features is you can take a pair of pants, and this is what I like to do for the week. You can take a pair of pants, and I'll show you. And you can clip in your shirt right on top of it
Yep.
like this. And then you can outfit prep for the whole week. So you
For
can
all
set
week.
up all your shirts, all your pants, and you can even clip spaghetti straps or tank tops or undershirts
Yep.
on top of it, and or stick socks on here. There's a million ways you can use it.
Right. 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 No, and that's pretty cool. Let me ask you this: How long have you been, or I guess when you first started the invention, or I guess kind of came out with the product? Because I know you talked about doing it your junior year in college, and just kind of looking at your socials. Definitely, you have kind of been able to build up a nice audience. I was kind of wanted to ask you, when was like the original creation? I know you said the junior year. What year was that?
So that was, let me think. I think I actually came up with the idea first in around 2020,
Okay.
2019, 2020.
Okay.
I can't remember exactly. Um, and I came up with the idea. I filed a PPA, which is, you know what that
Provisional.
is,
Yeah.
but provisional. And yeah, that was around 2019, 2020, my sophomore year of college. And then I sort of sat around on the idea for a little bit. I was working
Mm.
on the patent application. I had bought online. I had bought this chunky book called Patent It Yourself because I didn't have money to
Yeah.
hire a lawyer to write the whole thing for me. And so I did all the drawings and I did all of the body and paragraphs, abstract, all that stuff.
Yeah.
I wrote
Detailed
that out best
description.
I
Yep.
could. um, but I just followed the book. I mean, that's really what I did. I didn't have any previous knowledge writing patents or anything like that. So I bought the book online and I followed it page by page to write
Oh,
the patents.
so no, that's interesting. So, because again, it seems like that was 2019, 20, so maybe 4 or 5 years ago, 6 years ago,
Yeah.
maybe. So, I guess looking back on it in hindsight, would you kind of recommend kind of that path, or would you recommend some things differently for maybe viewers who obviously, if you kind of strapped for cash, then you have to do what you have to do. But I guess kind of going through that process and kind of looking back on it, I guess how would you maybe advise someone else to whether to follow a similar path or maybe
Yeah.
to do things differently here and there? How would you kind of make sense of that
Yeah, I
or
mean, I think
advice?
the path that I took with the design was probably the best path, even if I had the money for
Yeah,
a patent lawyer,
yeah,
because it takes time to flesh out the idea, to figure it out. And so filing the PPA first, which is so easy to file and so cheap, I think you can file it as an individual for like 65, $70. And if you're a small business, I think it's $135. And so, and it can be, and this is kind of funny. We have a new product that I've been developing and I filed a PPA for it and I had Chat GPT write it. And
really?
yeah, obviously I gave it the information it needed,
Yeah,
but that was another cheap way to make it at least a little bit solid. It's nothing that something like a lawyer could write, but
yeah,
it was better than something I could write. And it can literally just be pictures of prototypes or drawings. It can be pretty much anything. It could be a drawing on a napkin, you
Yep.
know?
Sure. Yep.
And so what it does is, as you know, it holds your idea to some degree for a year while you're figuring things out.
Yep.
And it notes the date of which you first sort of officially had that idea.
Yep.
And then you can figure it out from there, file the official patent, which that one I wrote myself as well. I didn't have Chat GPT back then. I wish I did.
Okay. Okay.
But that one, I went through the patent it yourself book. I didn't do, so I did all of the writing, all the drawings, everything, but I knew how important this design was and how important the patent was going to be, especially because it was a utility patent,
Yep.
which is especially detailed and legal, legally detailed. And so I finished all of the hours that I could. And then what I did was I took everything I had saved up and I hired a lawyer to essentially, I was like, please go over it, take like an hour of your time, which it was, you know, like $300 or $500 per
Yep.
hour. Take a couple hours, review it, and, you know, add whatever you need to add, take away whatever you need to take away, give me suggestions, I'll make changes. And that was the most economical way to do it at the time.
Yep.
But obviously, as you grow as a company, you know, I have less time. And so, and, you know, you're able to hire a lawyer to do more things. But when you're starting out, you really can't do that. And so that was the best way to do it. And that, you know, we ended up with an awesome patent that covers a lot of scope, a huge
Yep.
amount of scope.
Yeah,
So
for
we
sure.
have 3 products now that are all within the same scope of this one utility patent.
And that's the good thing I was going to say about having, and then maybe the more important thing as well, as far as kind of the claims. You talked about the different sections of a patent application. You have the detailed description, the summary, the abstract, the drawings,
Yep.
but the most important part of the application is the claim section. Now, again, to your point, when you're filing a provisional patent application, which really gets your place in line, it is not required to be in any particular format. Like you said, it can be written on a napkin. Not really, like I said, just gets your place in line. However, when you go to convert it within a year to a non-provisional application, you have to have it kind of buttoned up in the formality requirements that the USPTO requires. And out of the formality requirements, you have a number of different sections. And the most important section, in my opinion, is the claims, because it determines the scope. And to the extent that it's not a whole lot out there that's dealing with what you have, then you can get some broad claim scope, to your point, being able to kind of protect different verges or embodiments of your invention by way of a single patent, which it seems like you've been able to do, which is great. Let me ask you this. Was you, because again, at least I'm 35. It seems like maybe you're a little younger than me. It seems like Hangers has been around as far as all we know since the beginning of the time. Were you surprised that there was I guess, no, what's the word that I'm looking for? No progress on
Prior
hangers,
art
or prior art or progress in terms of, because typically when I go to the stores, the differences between hangers is, okay, is it plastic, is it metal? You don't see the kind of the different features. You do see some features here and there that you talked about to be able to kind of maybe help your clothing stay, attached to the hanger without sliding off. But you don't really see a ton of kind of work or kind of improvements upon the traditional hangers. Were you surprised after you maybe did your research, kind of went through the process, like, wow, there has been no improvement upon just kind of the regular hanger, the regular plastic or metal hanger?
Yeah, I was so surprised. And I was blown away, because usually I come up with an idea and I search it and there's something similar out there and I'm like, oh crap. But with this, I searched it and I was like, how is there not something like this already? How has there not been more innovation? And I realized the reason. So hangers have taken a very interesting trajectory. You know, they're very basic items, and I don't think people have thought too much into innovating the design, really. So what they've done is, they've added rubber here and there. They put velvet on it, which is I actually really don't like the velvet hangers because it's plastic sprayed with glue, sprayed with more plastic, which is what the velvet is. It's little pieces of
Mhm.
plastic. So
Yeah.
it's really bad for the environment. But that's really what the innovations have been, is just these tiny improvements here and there, um, in how well it holds the hanger on, but nothing more than that. And I think, yeah, it was so surprising. And, with any patent, you can do as much research as you can, but you're sort of like crossing your fingers, like, is there going to be something that was like 100 years ago that's
Yeah.
similar, right?
Yeah.
And um, both through luck and also the amazing lawyer that helped me,
Mhm.
um, we were able to get just incredibly broad claims for this design because there hasn't been anything like it. Um, and
Nice.
the closest thing was like 100 years ago. I think, actually more than 100 years, like 18 something. And someone designed something. It wasn't that similar, but it had a hinge in it. And obviously this is one piece, right? And
Yeah.
so, and it's got sort of uh, a static functional hinge here rather than uh, mechanical hinge.
Yeah.
And so that's how we were able to differentiate from this other one. Other factors as well, but it was just incredible how there hasn't been anything like that. And
Right.
it happens, I think it happens a lot more than we think. We come up with a good idea, and I come up with a good idea and I'm like, I wonder if this is a thing, and I search, it's just not a thing. And some people, I think that will happen. They'll be like, oh, that's so cool, I've got to patent that. And then it never happens, and then it just sits around. The key is at least get the provisional in,
Yeah.
write it on a napkin if you have to, and take
Yeah.
a picture of it with your phone and upload it, because that sort of gets the ball rolling. And then you can dilly dally for a year,
Yeah.
um, do other stuff, and then come back to it if it's worth it for you.
For sure, for sure. And let me ask you this, and this is actually great because I actually just recently came out with an ebook. I know we were talking offline about kind of just being able to, especially for the small businesses, being able to kind of educate them on IP, on entrepreneurship. I had recently came out with a book called Got IP, and obviously it's kind of talking all the way from the ideal phase to monetizing the product. And I've kind of interviewed almost 100 people, over 100 people at this point in time, and you kind of see some common themes. And it was cool to hear because you got to talk about some of those common themes without actually hitting on them. It was, coming up with your idea, then getting the feedback on your idea. So it's kind of these steps that you're kind of just naturally going through the process, doing a search yourself to be able to save money, maybe even up to filing a provisional patent application yourself. So all these different things I've included in a book of like a step by step to help out maybe small
Awesome.
businesses who have come up with an idea and they're like, okay, maybe what's next on it. I guess going back to you in your situation, you were in a college though. So how did you kind of make that determination of, okay, do I take this thing serious, or because obviously you're you're getting a college education, and again I was a mechanical engineer. That's my undergraduate degree, and those studies were somewhat strenuous. It wasn't like kind of you're doing nothing against communications majors, but as you're doing communication or one of the other degree fields that are maybe less strenuous, you actually had to focus time and energy and effort to kind of matriculate through undergrad. So how was that kind of mindset to be able to say, okay, I'm gonna kind of do something with this or take this somewhat serious, as opposed to saying, oh yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
This is something that I came out with that I'm never going to do anything with. How did you kind of come to that? Uh, make sense of all that?
Yeah. So I, and like you're saying, engineering is really hard. And so I was really in it. I didn't have much time at all. And so the provisional patent application was very minimal. And I came up with the idea, I filed the PPA, and I didn't want to think about it until summer came around because that's when I would have the time. And so
Yeah.
that really saved me.
Yeah.
Um, Otherwise, I wouldn't have had the time to do it.
Gotcha.
But that being said, I did actually write a majority of the main application while I was in school as well.
Yep.
And so it's not impossible if you're working or even full time.
Right.
It's not impossible. And I just did it in little chunks because you have a year to do it. So you can do it in little chunks. And now with ChatGPT, I wrote the PPA, which was almost a full patent length. No, it wasn't, but it was, it had all the
Yeah,
stuff a normal patent does.
for sure.
And I wrote that with AI in a day, and filed it that day because
Nice.
I had to, because I had
Up
to
against the
pitch it
deadline,
to
maybe.
retailers
Yep.
then like within the next week.
Wow.
And so, um, yeah, sometimes you just do it and then you come back to it later and continue and just a little bit every day.
No, nice. And again, kind of moving on to that process, you're saying, okay, because this obviously, a patent or IP in general, I would imagine, I think you have a trademark on Kangaroo Hanger, so this IP is just kind of one part of the process. You have other parts, whether it's marketing, whether it's manufacturing. Uh,
Yep.
how did that come along? Because you're still, I'm assuming, in school while you're doing this in undergrad. So how did that come along where it's like, okay, I have some opportunities to get out in front of retailers and being able to pitch this thing and seeing whether or not I can get off into retail? How did that kind of whole part of it
Yeah.
come along?
So I filed the final patent in my senior year. So I was about to graduate. I
Okay.
filed the final patent and then I didn't do anything. I looked for manufacturers and things like that for a while, for a year at least. And I didn't do anything because I didn't want to expose the patent, the the idea, until I was close to being sure that it was going to be approved, or that we were, until they sent me what the prior art was looking like. Um, so I sat on it for a year, more than a year, and worked on something else. And then,
Uh,
and I looked for manufacturers,
yeah,
and I knew that with something like this, well, it's expensive to create a product. You need tooling for the manufacturing process. You need to pay for initial inventory. And
yeah,
so I had to figure out how I was going to do that. And I had seen how many people were having success on social media. And so I didn't do social media. I didn't have like a bunch of Instagram
yeah,
followers or anything like
yeah.
that, just like 200 friends or whatever. And so, but and also I'm an introvert. And so talking and being in front of people and filming yourself is weird. And so I decided, you know what, screw it. I'm going to do it. I'm just going to do it. I'm going to try it for 30 days is what I told myself. Okay. I'm going to try it every day for 30 days. I set up the camera. I showed the hanger, and I looked at the analytics on the posts every single day. And I'd say, okay, like a bunch of people dropped off here at this on second 10 seconds, right? How could I have improved that? And then I just made slow iterations each day to the videos. And while I was doing that, I set up a website where I could collect pre-orders because I didn't have money to
Yep.
pay for the mold. I didn't have money to pay for the initial production run. I didn't have money to pay for the shipping. And so I set up pre-orders and I just started posting. And then I think after 30 or 40 days, one of the posts totally blew up. And this was,
Mm,
and it's the thing that's interesting about social media, I've learned, is it's not really random. It required 40 days of iteration. So like 40 days of seeing my video. Oh man, I screwed up this little part, or psychologically this part is, it's disconnected from what I'm talking about, or the hook. Generally the hook is one of the most important parts. And so I would be like, oh, the hook is too long or too short, or doesn't include a text component. And so it
mm,
just, over time, iteration after iteration, you figure out what draws people in, what keeps their attention. And when you apply those principles when you're making videos, you have a much higher rate likelihood of going viral. And so on day 40, I think one of the videos went totally viral. Now it's got 7 million views, I think, which is just, it was crazy. It was life changing. I had DMs from celebrities, athletes, people wanting to invest in my hanger. I was like,
Really?
this is ridiculous. Yeah. Um, and it was crazy. And obviously on that day, I was thinking, you know, I was so stressed because I would have to make another video. And now there's like 7 million people that are going to maybe watch the video. And it's like, holy crap. And so I made it, but I did it. I made another video the next day, and I think it did double. I think it has 14 or 15 million views
Wow.
to this day. And it was just crazy. And it just kept going from there. I would try different styles of videos. I just keep cranking every day. I posted every day for probably a year, close to a year.
Mm.
And that's what it requires. It just requires doing it every day,
Okay.
consistency, right? And it requires being okay with change, iterating, changing your design, thinking of trying different things and being okay. Oh, this one didn't work. But figure out why didn't it work?
Right.
Why weren't people interested in this? And then fix it for the next one, right? Maybe post the same style of video, but change the parts that didn't work. For example, I posted a video on TikTok first, and I monitored it for about an hour, and I realized, ooh, on like this third second of the video, a bunch of like half of the viewers dropped off. And so I went back into the editor, which I just shot and edited. I still do to this day on my phone. Like I don't use any fancy stuff.
Yeah.
And I went back into the editor. I edited those 3 seconds, and I think I edited out 3 seconds of just me talking about something that wasn't that important. And I posted it on Instagram. So I first tested it on TikTok, and sometimes you can do it one way or the other, but I posted it on Instagram, and it got 24 million views over the next couple months.
Wow.
But I think it got 500 views on TikTok. And so like those 3 seconds were the difference between 20 million views and 5 million views on a
Yeah.
video. And so it's very psychological. It's so crazy. You could study this in college and still not understand it completely because it's just really incredible.
No, yeah, and,
But
and it seems like, and that was one of the things that I was going to ask you about, just because looking at your kind of social media following, hundreds of thousands of followers across kind of all your platforms, and it seems like a lot of the videos had these virality moments. And again, to your point, you are an introvert at heart and mechanical engineering, so it wasn't like you had this background in maybe kind of marketing and things like that, but just being able to kind of figure out the algorithm and kind of what works, what doesn't work. I think you talked about posting every day and being
yep.
consistent. That the next thing you know, you have this kind of following, which, like you said, kind of could be life changing. What was like once you did get that big following and all these eyeballs? What was, because it's all about maybe also trying to capitalize off of it. Just because you have a lot of maybe viewers doesn't necessarily kind of always equate to sales or whatever the case may be.
Right.
So did you think about that kind of as you were getting these viral moments of like, okay, how can I uh
Yeah.
kind of capture these in terms of sales? So what was that
Yeah.
next step from that standpoint?
I mean, that was the thing, is I didn't have money for the mold or for production. And so I set up my website with pre-orders. I was like, this is the only way I'm going to be able to do this.
Yeah.
So I just put that link in my TikTok thing. And I think I mentioned it in the video. Like I'm taking pre-orders at the end of the video. And, some percentage of the people went and pre-ordered the hanger, and that gave me the money that I needed to produce the mold and to produce the first production run. And it was crazy. But I think that's the only time that I've really directly relied on social media for money for something.
Yeah.
But after that, focused more on building a community of people that are interested in inventions, interested in their closet, and interested in, you know, what I've been doing, what I've been working on. And then that translates along to sales or whatever
Right.
it
Right.
translates to.
Yep. Yep.
But I think focusing more on, because I never focused the videos on selling the product, because
Right.
nobody wants to be sold to.
Yeah. No, and you're
Um,
absolutely right
yeah.
with that. Yep.
So uh, yeah, that was mainly the goal with social media, and I think people follow you because what you're doing is exciting and new and cool, right? And that's what's crazy is now Kangaroo has, across all channels, like 600, close to 650,000 followers.
Yep.
Um, and people who are interested in a hanger, which is like so cool. Like a hanger, come on. Like it's so funny because
Yeah.
and it's so funny because I'll go to a retailer, and as part of my pitch, obviously I'm going to show them those statistics, but they're always so surprised. They're like, people are interested in following a hanger? Like, what?
Not just
Like,
any
this is
hanger, kangaroo hanger.
exactly Kangaroo Hanger. And this is not just, it's not just any hanger, as
Yep.
you know,
Yep.
it's something totally different. And it's also one of the only hangers that is made with recycled materials, which was one of the main goals with the Kangaroo Hanger. And we
Gotcha.
can talk about that more, but um, the goal, I was like, I cannot make a product that is going to hurt the planet. It's
Right.
just against my values, I guess.
Gotcha.
And so that was a huge thing, is most hangers are not recyclable, right? And so I decided, well, why don't we make it out of recycled material so we can take hangers or take other um, broken stuff and recycle it and make hangers out of it, and then also make the hangers recyclable as well. And so I found a material that does all of that and is super strong, and I doubled down on it, and that's part of one of the biggest factors in my for me
Yeah.
with Kangaroo Hanger is doing things, making something that you're excited to have in your closet, but also that there's no drawback to it. Like, you don't feel like you're buying something that can't be recycled, that's gonna end up in a landfill somewhere, you
Yep.
know?
No, yeah, and I definitely understand that. Let me ask you this, because it seems like now I kind of was doing some research, and it seems like you manufacture here in the USA in Wisconsin, if I recall correctly. And
Yes.
I mean, again, right now with the whole tariff situation, that seems like a brilliant, it was a brilliant ideal.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, although it seems like that may kind of have the price higher compared to if you did it, outsourced it in China, whatever the case may be. Why were you so big on making sure the product was manufactured here in the U.S. as opposed to maybe in a different country that's maybe a lot cheaper, where
yeah,
so many businesses decided to go that route?
that's a great question. Um, so I did actually start making them in China,
Oh,
and
really?
that's yes, that's where I did the pre-order run, and that's where I started out, because I had experience. I had started another, like, an Amazon business selling flash drives on
Oh,
Amazon from China, because one of my roommates in college knew the owner of this flash drive factory, and so
mm,
I, like, somehow worked my way in there.
mm,
And so I was very familiar with producing stuff in China and in Asia. And so when I went to produce the hanger, that was my first thought. So that's what I did. I took all the pre-order money and I built a mold. I did a production run to send for all the pre-orders. And then um, I, the thing with buying product and getting inventory from overseas when you're selling here in the US is it's got to be produced first. So that's like 30 to 60 days. Then it sits on a boat for 30 to 60 days.
Wow.
Then it goes from the boat to like a fulfillment center type of place. That takes 2 weeks. And so it's so inefficient in terms of financially inefficient, actually. Like, I realize, like, I would have to, and a lot of these manufacturers, when you're starting out, they won't give you credit. They won't give you terms on anything. So I would have to pay for most of the hangers upfront and then wait for almost over 100 days before I can even sell a single hanger, which
Mm.
was so inefficient to me and it just not possible. And so I realized, with the kangaroo hanger, the beauty of it is, and this is one of the important things about making a product, is you have to think about how it's manufactured. Because for the kangaroo hanger, if this was three parts that had to be put together, it couldn't
Yep.
be made in the US.
Yep.
So it's one piece and it can be injection molded with recycled material. And it's just a big clamp that, and then plastic injected straight into the mold. And this is the recycled plastic. And then the mold opens and the hanger falls out, and that's it. And then it goes straight into a box. And the beauty of that is it doesn't require as very much handling, which is what's super expensive here in the United States
Yep.
relative to other countries where wages are lower relative to the US cost, US dollar. Um, and so making these in the US is not actually that much more expensive than making them in
Wow.
China. And at the end of the day, because of all the timing stuff, that costs money, right? And shipping costs money. Sitting on a boat costs money.
Yeah.
Everything costs
Time.
money.
Yeah. Time is
Exactly.
money. Time
And
is
so,
money.
in my opinion, it's actually cheaper to manufacture the kangaroo hangers in the US if you factor everything in. And on top of that, I learned that the number one retailer of hangers, I don't know if I'm allowed to say brand names on here. Am
Oh
I?
yeah, for
I
sure.
don't know.
Go ahead. Yeah, yeah. Go
Okay.
ahead. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Walmart, the number one retailer of hangers in the US, they really, for small businesses, you want to be made in the US, because they have this event called Open Call, which is where if you have to be a US manufacturer,
Yep.
and you can be a small business, but you can apply for this open call and they consider your product to go in store. So I had to have it made in the US. So 2 or 3 months before this open call event, I was just calling US manufacturers like crazy and figuring out what I was going to do. And I found just an incredibly fantastic manufacturing partner in Wisconsin
Mm.
that has been, like, I couldn't have done it. I couldn't have built Kangaroo to where it is today without them. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, we got started. We started building molds here in the States.
Yep.
Um, and we went from there.
No, and so I was going to ask you, and so I thought that was a good segue into the whole Walmart thing because you're all over Walmart. I think I was looking at your IG and it said Target coming soon. But I guess with regard to Walmart, and maybe it was that casting call or the open call. How did that kind of relationship and opportunity come about?
Yeah. So what I've learned is nowadays, so you've got retail buyers and they're people in at Walmart, at Target, and their job is to decide what products go into store and what brands are behind those products. And so nowadays, retail buyers look a lot and care a lot about momentum, and it's hard to get your product into Walmart unless you have proof that your product is going to succeed. And in my case, that proof was millions, or at that time, like 100 million views, and like, you know, a lot, maybe a million, no, not a million, maybe a quarter of a million comments that were all like, I want to buy this right now. Like, this is awesome. This is the coolest hanger I've ever
Yeah.
seen. And so that was my proof. And the other ways you can get proof is by going with smaller retailers, growing that way. But that was my proof. And So what I did was I just applied to the open call event, and this is through a site called Range Me, which is
Mm.
has also been absolutely invaluable to Kangaroo Hanger. Like that site, it allows you to literally set up a profile for your brand and for your products and apply directly to retailers. Because
Wow.
normally before it's like a black box, like you don't know, you got to like guess their email address or
Yep.
pray that they email you,
Respond
right?
you back. Yeah, respond back to you.
Yeah. And so I applied on Range Me and for all the retailers, and that's really how it got started. And I think also another factor, a main factor, is both the Walmart buyer and the Target buyer, both of them saw one of my videos on Instagram or TikTok,
Mm.
and they were inspired by it. And so it was right around the time when I had applied, so I think it was part of that as well.
Yeah.
But I got an email from the buyer, from one of the senior buyers at Walmart one day. This was like a year ago. And I got an email and it said, we love your product. We're interested in recycled materials and what you're doing, and let's build a partnership together. And so that's really how it started. But what it takes is proof, really proof that your product is going to do well, because they're not in the business of taking risks.
Yeah, for sure. Exactly. Yeah, you're right about that. So let me ask you this: how many? I guess up until this point in time, do you have the number of how many of the kangaroo hangers have been sold? Just kind of whether it's Walmart, whether it's on
It's a
your
good question.
platform, whether it's Amazon. I kind of saw that you had the Amazon posting as well. Do you have that number of kind of year not year to
Yeah.
date, but just kind of what's the
I
total
haven't
number of
thought about
sales?
that in a long time, actually. It's been so crazy. And we haven't, so we've launched with Walmart in some select stores
Yep.
here in Texas. And that was one of the reasons I moved here, because I wanted to be able to go into the stores
Yeah,
and talk to the people in the stores and, you know, really do my due diligence.
for
Um,
sure.
but um, I also, well, that's a lie. I didn't move here for that, but it was just a plus.
Right, yeah, one of the reasons. We'll say one
One of
of
the
the
reasons.
reasons, hey,
Exactly.
whether it's,
Um,
taxes or the weather, hey, Texas has a lot of good things going for itself,
yeah.
I'll
And we
say
haven't,
that.
we're planning on launching in Target very soon,
Okay,
in a month. And
nice.
so we haven't sold any yet in Target.
Right,
Um, Obviously we've sold hangers to Target because it's wholesale.
yeah,
But a lot of hangers. I would say we've sold over 1,000,000 hangers at this point.
nice. Wow,
Individual hangers. Obviously, they're
yeah,
they're sold in packs,
yeah, for
and
sure.
so I don't know, but I haven't thought about that. I should probably do that, figure that out, but I
No,
haven't thought about that for a
and I
while.
would imagine, that I was gonna guess that it was at least maybe 1,000,000, so that's cool that you're kind of probably saying the same thing of, "Oh, yeah, it's" like you said, there whether it's a 3-pack or a 6-pack, I had the website up, I wasn't sure what's the size of them. But yeah, it's, the fact that they're sold in packs, I would imagine that you've sold at least 1,000,000, which again, that's no small feat in and of itself, man. I think that's legit. So and I guess with that maybe being said, we know business is not maybe a kind of just a linear progression. You have the ups and the downs, more of a, like a sine wave. Uh,
Yeah.
this is a question, maybe a two-part question that I always like to ask the guests. What is the biggest breakthrough that you kind of had up until this point in time with the business? And then on the flip side, what was the biggest kind of challenge that you had, the
Mm.
biggest challenge that you had to overcome? Seems like you had a lot of
So,
breakthroughs and challenges
yeah.
with regard to manufacturing and being able to get it here in the US and
Yeah.
kind of virality moments. What would you say was the kind of the biggest breakthrough with the business up until this point in time? And then on the flip side, the maybe biggest
Yeah.
challenge that you had to overcome.
I think the biggest breakthrough by far was the viral videos. I think the return on investment on those is just unlike anything anyone has, the social media has provides this incredible return on investment from your time. So, if you're doing it right and you're willing to put in the work and be consistent, you know, you can make it happen. Um, And so that's by far been the biggest turning point and positive. Just that is what started
Yep.
the domino effect.
Yep.
Um, but obviously, it was years, 3 or 4 years of behind the scenes, figuring it out, dealing with the patent, finding manufacturers, starting other businesses that failed or didn't do well. I mean, I've started probably 3 or 4 other businesses. I can't even think. I haven't thought about that in a while,
Yeah.
but um, you know, it's not just something that happens, but it's something that you can make happen through just consistency. And then to answer your other question, the biggest sort of roadblock or issues that we've had, I mean, it's like once a week or more. But it's something that you've got to get you really used to and you build a thick skin to, and you can't lose sleep over it because, and you will. I have lost many hours of sleep over problems and things that we run into, but you learn over time that as long as you're doing what's right in general, things will go your direction, and you're going to run into issues, you're going to run into stuff, but in general, as long as you're doing things right and you have, you know, the best intentions with everything you're doing, then the problems generally work themselves out.
Right. Right. No, yeah, and I definitely would agree with that. I would imagine that, like you said, a lot of that just comes with experience and time, where you kind of look back, maybe 5 years ago and say, man, a lot of those things I kind of made bigger than what they were. Now, some things happens that are kind of big, but uh, like you said, some things are going to come up when you're running a business, when you're kind of doing things, and it's a lot of moving parts. But you can't give the same, I guess, attention to everything, at least the way I see it. And like you said, a lot of people do kind of tend to lose sleep over maybe the small things, unfortunately. But it's just kind of part of learning, I guess. And like you
Yeah.
said, experience is the biggest teacher with that, which is a cool thing. Let me ask you this. For aspiring entrepreneurs, again, because it seems like, kind of, even though you had the mechanical engineering degree, and I would actually ask you this, because you talked about you being an entrepreneur. I kind of looked up background. It seems like you had a lot of entrepreneurial businesses, Dynametrics, the development manager, obviously Kangaroo Hanger here. Even though you had that mechanical engineering undergrad, was the goal always to be an entrepreneur, or did that just kind of come about over time?
Good
Because it seems like
question.
you kind of never
Yeah.
worked with like, with regard, like, for example, for me, I mechanical engineer, did an intern at Ford Motor Company, engineering intern at another utility company within the state of Michigan. Then I just ended up going to law school. I had some businesses, real estate, which I'm still in the real estate. Then I had some other businesses that maybe didn't do so well. But then I ultimately went to law school, and then next thing you know, I'm a patent attorney, and my path kind of went that way. But for you, it
Yeah.
seems like you kind of never worked with maybe in a corporate life, so to speak. Uh, with regard to being an engineer. So
Yeah.
how did that kind of maybe come about to say, okay, screw this engineering stuff, I'm gonna just be a full-time entrepreneur?
Yeah. And I think, yeah, my whole life I've wanted to have a business. I love making stuff.
Yep.
And that's why I got my degree in mechanical engineering. Um, and I also got it's a dual degree in product design and mechanical engineering, and which is exactly what I like doing. That's what I like doing here at Kangaroo, is the product design stuff. And so I always knew I never saw myself working a normal job. And so in my sophomore or junior year, maybe the summer between, I realized I've got to start a business that is going to be making me enough money for when I graduate, so that I don't have to because I don't know, I had this fear of, if I started, a 9 to 5, I'm going to get stuck in
And a
that,
lot of people
you
get
know?
caught in that rat race,
Yeah.
unfortunately. And again, sorry to cut you off, but I mean, I've
No,
had
no, no.
people on here that it seems like that's kind of the preferred time. It was a guy who actually he was from California, but he kind of went to the University of Wisconsin. He was on Shark Tank.
Yeah.
So snow removal, a company that kind of, it's help you, I guess, to the extent that you're near a university, college kids can kind of work and go
Mm,
shovel snow for maybe kind of people within a community that's kind of nearby campus. And he started that, I think maybe a junior year, senior. I think it's sophomore, junior year at University of Wisconsin. So you see a lot of kind of people, which is cool that they're inventing or starting businesses in college,
mm,
which I think is maybe more preferred as opposed to you graduating and now you have a wife and a kid and all these
right.
kind of extra expenses that it's kind of tougher to kind of pull away from at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was a big factor. And yeah, I think even if you have a lot of responsibilities, it's still possible to
Yeah.
start a business. It just takes doing a little thing every day, and then eventually you've done a big thing, you know? And so that's what it really takes. But I never really wanted a normal 9 to 5. So I started this Amazon flash drive business, which was Dynametrics. And that made me like 30 grand, maybe a year coming out of college, which is nothing, but it was enough for me to live in my parents' basement and for me to be able to pursue the hanger
Yeah.
and try and grow the flash drive business. Um, and I think a huge factor with entrepreneurship and in today's modern world is debt and money, because both of those are things that it's just a harsh reality of starting a business and betting on yourself,
Yeah.
because betting on yourself, it means for most people, including me, it means loans, it means being in debt, but being in educated debt, I guess is the way I'd put it. You
I
don't
like
want to just be thrown around like, I'm starting a business, I'm going to spend all this money and buy all this stuff.
that.
It's okay. I have to buy this for the business, or I have to spend this money here. And it's creating value in the business in this way. And it's
Yeah.
creating more value in the business in the long term than the debt that I'm going into now.
Yeah.
And so, even to this day, and the crazy thing is with finances when you're starting a business is there's a lag, years of lag. So you can have a ton of success, and I've had I've had so many incredible things happen over the last year, two
Yeah.
years, but the financial stuff doesn't catch up until later. And so, for example, I'm still in debt to this day,
Yeah.
and a lot of debt, but it was calculated debt,
Yeah.
and it was debt that built, and you have to build this tolerance to debt as well as you're growing a business, whether that's to investors or whether that's to the bank or to credit cards, whatever it might be. But that's something you've got to do is you've got to build a thick skin to it, but make sure that you're spending it in a way that's building much more than you're spending in the long term, because otherwise you're going to end up with a problem. You're going to end up with a lot of debt and potentially nothing in return. And that's where it can get really scary. But as long as the decisions you're making are leading to more value in the company, then it's worth taking that risk.
I like that. No, I definitely like that, and I think that maybe answered the question a little bit that I was going to go off into a couple of minutes ago about kind of the advice to the aspiring entrepreneurs. Yeah, man. Again, yeah, that debt is a weird thing because it seems like sometimes people, like you said, the calculated debt. I like that word. Sometimes people are quick to kind of rack up uh, uncalculated or not good debt and kind of are okay with it. But then when it's maybe time to get some debt or whatever the case may be, that's kind of can be beneficial.
Yeah.
Then it's like a different approach. But yeah, as long as it's something like you said that can kind of be beneficial for the business, then it's maybe not a big issue compared to you're just kind of throwing. Again, for example, I think some concert or whatnot festival that just went, and I seen a lot of people. I heard a lot of people were kind of going into debt or kind of taking out maybe loans or
Oh,
whatever the case may be to go to the concert, and it was like, man, that
yeah.
makes no sense.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting how that has shifted a lot. But yeah, I think as an if I was starting out, the best advice I could get is you're going to be if unless you start out with a lot of money or you can find the thing with getting an investor, because as I told you when I went viral, I had a bunch of people that wanted to invest in the company. And that's a great route for a lot of entrepreneurs. The thing is it's not everything is just you're not just getting money, right? You are, but you're giving away a part of your
Part of
business
the company, yeah.
and you're also giving away a lot of your autonomy as a founder. So that's one of the drawbacks to that. And one of the reasons why as I was growing Kangaroo, I figured I would rather be in a ton of debt myself and own the business because I know I'm building something of value, right? Than um than take on an investor and not have full autonomy over the business in the long term, you
Yeah.
know? But that being said, there were many times where over the last couple of years where I was like, I have a week, and if I have a week, I'm going to be broke in a week, or I can't pay off this loan, whatever, in a week. And I might have to call this investor and get an investment. And it's been that close many times, or I can't pay my rent or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But it's all part of starting a business, and you, you know, you're building something so exciting that the value of what you're building needs to be 10 times the value of of the debt or the sacrifices that you're making. Otherwise, what's the point?
For
What's the
sure.
point of doing that?
No, yeah, and I definitely agree with you on that. Some kind of measured risk there, but it seems like as long as kind of maybe everything kind of looks up or things make sense, then it yeah, I don't think I don't know. I'm always, and it's funny, I didn't plan on going into this, but I'm just always for just diversifying
Yep.
different streams of income. Actually, just before I kind of had this interview, I had a gentleman who's a colleague of mine. We
Mm.
graduated law school together, started at uh, one of the earlier law firms together, and kind of he just called and was like, "Hey man, I went in for my review earlier today, and everything was good. I was great on my hours and all this." And a client, one of the big one of the firm's big clients, kind of pulled their work, and hey, I'm thinking everything's going to go great. I just closed on another house yesterday, and HR told me I didn't have a job at the end of the month. So
Oh my
those are
gosh.
tough things, and I think when you have a business or you have something else going on to kind of lessen that blow. Now he's going to be
Yeah.
totally fine. But again, just kind of if that's the only income you have, then you're a lot more at mercy to maybe any employer, as opposed if you have
Yeah.
something else going on. Like for example, I have real estate, so
Yep.
if something happened, I know that I'm still going to generate thousands of dollars a month every month from real estate.
Yep.
I'm coming out with, we talked about the ebook that's out and other books, just different products that is going to help soften the blow in the event something is not performing the way it needs to perform. And I just think more people need to
Yep.
take that approach as opposed to just relying on his one income, especially with the layoffs that's happening left and right. Seems like annually these days, you have to have something that's going to lessen that blow to the extent that
Mhm.
that comes calling, or that's your situation. So that's why I'm always big for people to kind of, hey man, whether you have a service you want to provide, a product, a widget you want to sell, and just do it. And I don't know. That's kind of my take on,
Yeah.
I guess my
I
take on
agree.
that.
I
So
agree with you 100%. And I couldn't have built Kangaroo without the income from my flash drive business.
yeah,
And, you're sort of building over time, you're building this momentum.
yeah,
And um, it's interesting because as you grow your business or multiple businesses, the scale gets bigger and bigger and bigger, right? And that's really what you want to do is build the scale of what you're doing,
yeah.
and the profit will come. Um,
Possible come. Yeah,
but if you're building the scale, if you're building the scale of what you're doing to be bigger, then it gives you a lot more freedom and a lot more leeway. So
Yep.
like if I didn't have my flash drive company, there were situations where I was like, oh, I was in a tough spot, but that income saved me in that spot. And so, and yeah, my whole philosophy with businesses is plant a bunch of seeds, right?
Yep.
Put all your effort into each of these seeds for short periods of time, and one of them or multiple, but usually one is going to blossom, right?
Yep.
But you have to plant all these seeds in order to have that one to blossom.
For sure. Exactly. As opposed, yep. No, I agree with that. And I guess kind of similar, maybe similar to what you were saying. I mean, with everything, just not focusing on the money, but for me at least, just trying to provide value. So with these interviews, I do a number of different things I guess the podcast, the media side of things now. And just trying to kind of create this vertical, but I'm also just trying to provide value, whether it's with the client, whether it's media, kind of breaking down something from an IP perspective, just trying to provide value. So yeah, that's kind of how I look at it, and kind of understanding that everything will take care of itself over the
Yeah.
long haul. I guess maybe the last question I have for you, I want to be respectful of your time, is
No,
maybe the most important question: how can they follow you? It seems like, again, hundreds of thousands of followers across multiple platforms. How can they follow you, and more importantly, how can they purchase the product?
yeah, absolutely. So you can just either Google or go on Instagram or TikTok or YouTube and just search Kangaroo Hanger, and we're there. Um, and if you want to buy kangaroo hangers, you can go on Amazon. You can go to our website, or which is kangaroohanger.com, or you can go to select one of the Walmart stores here in Texas and in Oklahoma. Or you can wait a month and get it in Target, one of the Target stores, and those are going to be nationwide. So, yeah, those are the ways if you want to get kangaroo hangers and invest in your closet and your morning. Really, is what it is. Is you're investing in your time. Then those are the routes you can take.
Well, you heard it. Hopefully you got, again, we saw it earlier. He kind of showcased all the different functions and uses of it. So whether you're a man, whether you're a woman, hey, it's a lot of different uses that you can use Kangaroo Hanger for. So definitely go check it out. By way of the variety of ways or stores that they are selling in. And hopefully you guys had the pencils out, you had the papers, taking notes. Angus, he dropped a lot of jewels with regard to how he kind of created these viral moments about kind of getting getting the product in Walmart, getting it in Target. Talked about manufacturing. That's a big part of it. And really just trying to kind of get the most out of things, especially early on, without having a lot of money. And I thought that was
Yep.
some good things that he talked about with there. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. You guys may have to kind of put it on repeat or go back and watch it a second time, because it was a lot of jewels dropped in the video or in an interview. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it, and I'll catch you guys the next time. Take care.